I was in a classroom, and we were supposed to fight each other with these mechanical suits the teacher gave us. I started going around smashing the classroom's toys, then I jumped on a helicopter and flew out of class, and I followed somebody else. Then the classroom turned into the home of a childhood friend, but his room was on the top, and I was floating above it thinking about them abandoning me, but they lured me in and said they didn't forget. I started hanging out with them, and their old friend said they all used to hang out to walk before I came into the picture. And he was also looking for a large broken projector to smoke out of. He blew drug smoke right in my face. I couldn't see him from all the smoke, and I got so high that I rushed inside and ran into my friend's bed on me, so he ran upstairs, but that made me more sober. So I used these runes on the ground to levitate out of the house, and then I hid outside in the grass, and then became a bird to hide. The dad summoned zombies everywhere to watch for me, and then I flew away and grabbed these items, and the zombies saw me, so then I was flying in an airplane shooting lightning at the dad's big airplane that kept appearing in front of me. I eventually shot his plane down, but he took out my wing and I crashed too. Really interesting dream there. I was in a lunchroom and everyone was mad. All my family were there and they were insulting me and my family. So I questioned them and they yelled at me and pushed me. And everyone yelled at each other. I found a hallway and it was creepy and had flickering lights. I recorded myself walking down it. And when I watched it back, it had new people in it. Or it was a new video altogether. The hallway led to the end, well-lit hallway that led into a mall. Oh yeah, I remember this dream now. It was like a big store. There were all of these frozen food aisles, and it was really dark. Yeah. And then the police changed the waves of the video or something, and it became corrupted. So essentially what happened in the dream, why the video was a new video altogether, was because they didn't want me recording this hallway. And it was kind of like a government official building. So what they do is they would change the video, and essentially it was like radio static of a video that got changed into like a compilation of just other videos, or like a video that was pre-recorded in that same hallway, if it makes sense. Like it was a government conspiracy. I came back and I was looking for my speaker. Everyone was playing Lil Peep and the lunchroom was empty. So I started playing Cemetery and found my speaker immediately. I then went to get water from the machine and stole the Doritos bag and walked out. Then I went to Liz's grandma's, and then I got my deviation social record and started heading home. When I was home, I left my weed out. My dad found it, and he started yelling at me. He wanted me dead, and he was so mad at me. My uncle tried defending me, but he threatened to kick his ass. We went to Arkansas, and there was a clay kiln building with trees shot outside from suicide and hunting trips. It was on top of a hill. I remember this one actually, too. Is a brick building, and there was holes in these trees outside, and it showed me like I could vision what happened. And they were also telling me, it was like me looking back in time, and there was like a suicide, and people were hunting around these buildings. So we went all the way around the building. Yeah, we walked around the building and went in the back door, and it was a hallway with a right turn to a big open area, and with a direct left turn to a place to drink tea. This building was brick and wood. It looked like an antique shop kind of, but it had like these clay kiln things in the big open area. It was a really interesting building. I remembered my tea, so I grabbed my mugwort, skullcap, and wild lettuce mix and something else and brewed 2 teas. I got distracted for about 10 minutes, so I overdid my tea and then forgot about them. I did something that made everyone mad, so I hid outside and they all chased me. I believe that they were trying to hunt me down in this dream with like guns and stuff. I went to a movie and general supply store called Dreamland, and it was a long drive. My cousin Caleb and my cousin Robbie followed me in their own cars, and I wanted to look, but they wanted to get out, and they both made sure I was going along with them. This Dreamland place looked like a Dollar General with like really long CD aisles and really long movie aisles, and it had like that aura of like a building where, you know, you'd go in and buy like toys, like cheap plastic toys for kids. Like, I don't know exactly. When I was a kid, like, I'd get a basketball from these places or some weird novelty item that was really cheap, you know. So anyway, next dream. My high school was a collection of small crammed pipes like a boiler room, and I was hanging out with a short-haired small girl who needed my help. In this dream, it was a really interesting thing. It was like a boiler room on the water. It kind of reminded me of Fallout in a way, and it was at night. And I just remembered it being really green and brown. So it really reminds me of like Fallout 3. I tried going room to room to look for help, but instead I saw things like dark, empty rooms and extremely steeply stacked desks, like steeply sat desks, like a professor room in a college. And outside it was raining with a 2-story pipe walkway with extremely cramped walls, making it impossible for tall people to walk up or step inside the classrooms that were extremely round and short. It looked like a boat, like a submarine in some places, like those metal doors. Also, some classrooms had glass walls on the front of the room, like a mall. So it was almost like a mixture of a mall as well. I took an elevator to the top floor. I searched through stuff like plastic bowls on the floor and desks in a room that looked very green and brown, with rusty walls and glass windows overlooking the dreary, rainy weather. I went to the library and read about mysticism. I kept walking forward, but the room kept showing up over and over again, and I couldn't reach the bookshelf. One main room, and that's where that stops. I didn't have much more about that. And here's the next dream. I was in my school, and I had to put together my desk and take a test. Take a test at the same time. I'm sorry, this was, my dreams when I wake up. You know how it is, the mind. My teacher said she didn't care. I didn't get the test portion, and I tried telling her my ideas. She said it was a bad idea, so I threatened to drop out and ran downstairs and outside the office door. Was hanging out with my baby cousin, and he was smashing his head on the ground and into walls, and I couldn't help him. He wouldn't listen. I left with a tattoo of an old friend and my cousin's name to try to remember the trip to see them. I guess I was going on a trip to see them. My uncle Jeff and my brother and some weird friends all got together to racetrack, and we did Xanax and Adderall together in a wooden bar type atmosphere. It was like this racetrack with a wood paneled bar, and it was a really interesting place. We left on a bus with a man with very chaotic hair, and while we were on the trip home, the bus went straight into the river. We, in the dream, swam out of the bus. I remember the bus just being like a long ride, and he just like crashed it, and it was like he couldn't collect his steering, so it was like he just drove straight off into the river, and it was like a drainage ditch type, river underneath a bridge, I think. it was a very man-made river. It was, concrete walls and all that. Ooh, this is an interesting one. Next dream was at my aunt's house recording music by recording the vibrations on metal. And I was going to release an album called the Hen House Sessions. So I have dreams about this technique this guy tried to do, where he would get the vibrations and he'd directly translate them to paper. It wasn't something, it was the first recordings ever, and I had dreams a lot about what if the process was different, what if you could use water or metal or something, you just put a pen on a piece of metal and then it just turns to something completely different. So I got into a car with a family member and he drove really fast. Something about some weird mysticism. And he drove into a train and then into an industrial area and then shot a woman in the head and she died immediately. I hid behind a dumpster laying face down. He went to jail and I was reading all sorts of books. In this dream, it was a really interesting one too. I can't really explain exactly how everything came out, but it was in the easiest way, that's what happened. Now this dream is a masterpiece. If anyone ever takes this dream and makes it into something, I would be proud of this. Anyway, I saw a Martin Scorsese film that started and ended like Gummo. The in-between, of this movie, the center parts, was a chaotic film. It seems like it dated back to the early 1900s, in theme and plot. And one of the protagonist kids had a black baseball bat that was wrapped in fabric, while other kids had large crucifixes and gas masks, and they'd sit in water. And it was a very swampy film in the southern United States. So, yeah, that was the part. I love that, though. It was cool. I was watching some cool cinema that doesn't exist in, my dreams, and that's, all I can really remember, so at least I got that right. So anyway, I went out into the hallway, and my granddad was making predictions and religious statements, so I had to leave. And then my cousin, Joey, was recording with a cassette, and I asked him to record old memories of Granddad on his cassette player, that he would just say, I went into a classroom while everyone was watching a foreign movie, and on the background, or the backboard, there's a worst movies list, and the only movie I could remember is the Tom Green movie. When I studied the board a bit, I went back to my class. There's an Eric Andre movie where he played Joseph Stalin, who dressed up like a member of the fascist military of Germany, and the military men acted like they could almost read his thoughts, so he kept getting scared and running away. Then lines of flies started hitting random squares on the wall, so people started setting up cameras to take pictures. I was hungry, so I ate a ton of food with my mom. We had McDonald's and eventually Thai food, but when we got to the restaurant, the walls were filled with DVDs and TV screens, and people were playing Call of Duty. I got sucked into one of the screens, and this character was shooting all these weird-looking characters from TV, except when he went back to one, it was a girl dressed in all black, and she turned around with a gray dress and had blood, half-circle designs on each of her breasts, and a dead face crying blood with short gray hair, and she floated upwards. I came back to the Call of Duty thing to play too. I grabbed my memory cards and put them in the trunk like it was a console, then walked around but still couldn't play. I then started buying Xbox equipment, and every time I bought it, these kids would bust it and throw it out of a window, so I left. In this dream, it looked really cool. It was like a big restaurant. Like, I guess the closest thing I can really tell you is like a mixture of a Buffalo Wild Wings and an Applebee's. And like, all of these characters were like skins in a game, if that makes sense. So it was like a massive multiplayer experience that was kind of like Call of Duty, vaguely like Call of Duty. Eventually, I went outside into a trailer where the neighbors played loud music. It was the same people from the Call of Duty game and restaurant, so I was really upset. And I said really mean things while I was laying down. And then somebody busted in and said, "We called the cops." And then one of their friends just came to the door, and I quoted the Devil's Playground. I guess it was like Koopsta, the album, the 3-6 Mafia album. I guess I quoted that. And then we went to the desert and walked a long path and saw all these small plants. And we walked alongside a small prairie dog type thing and a guy on a small camel. The path, you walked up the path, like it was upwards, like uphill. And yeah, that's a pretty cool dream. Here is the next dream. I was at my aunt's house with gang members, and they called us cops, so we executed them. We accidentally shot my brother in the head, and he started acting like a child again, and it made me really sad, so I tried my best to get him to a hospital. I was with a ghost in the street, putting up trinkets like kids' toy furniture. It started in a small child's room when I was looking through her paper notes. And then I walked down a dark street and I walked into a hall that looked like an office hall. I was taking pictures of a barn, and one of the rooms was a massive gym. And I was talking to a guy who was just hit with a ton of water bottles by people around him. I talked to people around him, and one of the people was going through my bag stealing my stuff. His friends surrounding him said I was evil, but one of his friends to the side was curious about my art. I had 3 books, and they were labeled up to 4, so I was missing one. I pulled out a small book someone gave me, and it was illustrations of hell and the forest with strong witch undertones. I eventually left and walked around the barn house again. I was trying to get into the barn out back because it had massive locks on the door and I couldn't see inside. When we eventually got inside, it was full of tables and chairs. And then we're at my grandma's old trailer. It was at night, and I believe we moved back in. So that barn dream was really interesting. It was like one of the barns in Arkansas, I guess. It was a massive gray and red barn and had these huge doors in the center, and we couldn't get in. So eventually we got in, and it was just like a really nice barn, but it had a bunch of tables and stuff blocking the way so we couldn't really move around. And then I probably had a dream where I was walking around each room, and they're like really vintage looking rooms. So I can't really give too much insight about what it looked like. Next dream. My uncle came to help change the fan in the bathroom in our house. And my grandma's urns moved all the way downstairs in some weird places. Because I have one of my grandma's urns in my room, and it was just like moving everywhere in my house. I took a shower and then got out of the bathroom. This guy who had a best friend and some kids was really abusive, and he pulled a knife on his friend for trying to get his son education. Everyone ran up and pulled a knife on him too until he described what was happening. Then everyone left, but one person pushed the abusive dad down some stairs and broke his neck. Then the best friend got really sad and started looking over his body. The man who was killed turned into a ghost and started off by saying goodbye to his wife, and he also worried about his father. This dream took place in this like really run down area. It was like a 2-story kind of house that looked really like poverty stricken, if it makes sense. Like, really, really run down house. But then he went to prison and started pranking people. Their inside jokes were air horns and shaving cream. So he'd spray shaving cream all over people's heads and put air horns through the lockers. Yeah, and he was a ghost this whole time. So I'm pretty sure. Yeah, I don't really remember how he got in or got out, but yeah, he was a ghost and he was pranking people in a jail. I might save the next dream for like another video because it's really long.